I need confirmation that Kuzan is a double agent for Sword ASAP. That is the big question. Is Kuzan a good boy, a bad boy, or a sword boy? Weirdly enough, chapter 1064 was the first time we've had confirmation that Kuzan is a member of Blackbeard's crew, despite years and years of pretty blatant hints and speculation, which I imagine has to make him the 10th Titanic captain. And if so, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, Kuzan would be the reason why Stronger was denied his rightful place as a Titanic captain. He has both seniority and a mythical Pegasus fruit, so he should be leading his own legion of hooligan horses. Actually, what's the collective noun for horses? Is it really just a herd? That's kind of boring. Oh, apparently you can also call them a harass of horses, which I think is much more appropriate for the Blackbeard pirates under the ever volatile leadership of Stronger. But why did Kuzan join the Blackbeard pirates? To answer that question, we need to examine why he left the Marines. But to answer that question, we also need to know why he joined the Marines. Yes, it is a bit convoluted, but just stick with me here. When it comes to the past of our young Kuzan, he appears to have had a less than great childhood, with Oda's drawing implying that Kuzan was homeless because of the sack, also a child alcoholic because of the alcohol, and a boy who really did not like the rain because of his umbrella. He also has that typical scrappy Oda texture that he uses to denote economic unfortunacy. I don't think that's a word. Essentially though, Kuzan grew up in a very unjust world. So to remedy this, as an older but still at this point much younger man, he enlisted in the Marines, the one organization that promised justice above all else. Now here's something that most people don't know about Kuzan, primarily because it has yet to be stated in the series itself, but he is most well known for his motto of lazy justice. However, that was not his original justice. But first, this video is sponsored by Established Titles, a project based on a Scottish custom whereby landowners are referred to as lords, lairds, and ladies in English. In fact, even my dog has recently become Lord Don Quixote Dog Flamingo, and so has packed his bags and is currently on his way to Scotland to claim his birthright. Title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land with a unique plot number on a private estate in Eddleston, Scotland. And with them, you can officially include the title of Lord or Lady on all sorts of things like credit cards. It's amazing. They make a great last minute gift, and Established Titles plants a tree with every order, working with global charities in order to support restoration efforts. Plus, I've been told that everyone who uses my link will get plots next to each other, so we could even build our own kind of Scottish land-based Grand Line empire. Go to establishedtitles.com to shop their Black Friday sale and get an additional 10% off using code GRANDLINE to support the channel as well as my dog's ego. Speaking of, he set sail to Scotland, but has suddenly realized that he has no idea where Scotland actually is. So do that thing, but for now it's back to you. Me? For much of his career as a Marine, Kuzan practiced burning justice, or fired up justice, which Eiichiro Oda revealed to us in the SBS of Volume 64, and this only changed after the Ohara incident, where Kuzan witnessed a sanctioned genocide committed by his fellow Vice Admiral, and was forced to kill a good friend of his with his own icy hands. This was the moment that broke Kuzan. He might seem like a very sleepy, apathetic man today, but he used to be much more actively driven, more like Sakazuki, really. And so lazy justice is less of a profound life philosophy from Kuzan, and much more of a justice placeholder after discovering that what he thought justice was complete injustice, and thus Kuzan was left with just ice. For most of the time we've known Kuzan, he's been in a very tricky situation, acting as more of a fence sitter. In fact, his sleeping mask is a perfect representation of this. Oftentimes, Kuzan would just prefer to cover his eyes and disconnect from all of the injustice around him. I mean, yeah, he does help out where he can, but he doesn't necessarily actively strive for justice the way he once did. And he's been disillusioned with the Marine organization for over 2 decades now. And really, as much as post-time skip Kuzan seemed a bit foreign to us, it really is just him going back to his roots as a child, aimlessly wandering the world with nothing but a backpack, and I guess now a giant penguin. That penguin's name, by the way, is Camel, which is not confusing at all. I suppose it does make sense because Kuzan rides it like a camel, but in the end, it is still a penguin. And Kuzan did wonder with Camel the Pangwang for quite some time, because when we caught up with him post-time skip, the whole joining of the Blackbeardery was still a very fresh event. And we know this because Doflamingo went, Kuzan, I heard you did a bad thing with an even badder man. Such rumors not good. But the much more interesting conversation here was the one with Smoker. Smoker asked Kuzan how he knew he was on Punk Hazard, and Kuzan never actually answered. Smoker's assumption from there was that Kuzan had informants within the black market, which in retrospect may even be the Blackbeard market. And here I would propose a dichotomy. With the information we have, only one of these two can be a member of Sword. If Smoker is a member, then Kuzan isn't, and vice versa. If Kuzan is affiliated with Sword, then knowing Smoker's whereabouts are quite simple, because he would still have an informant within the Marines. However, in that case, Smoker can't be a member because he probably wouldn't have jumped to black market conclusions. So in my estimation of fictional Marines, the leader of Sword is only one of 2 people, Fujitora or Kuzan. Currently, Diaz Drake is said to be the captain of Sword, but if he really is as high as the organization goes, then I will have to give him all of the credit in the world for being able to manage logistics by distance, because he spent the last 2 years on Wano completely isolated from the rest of the Sword boys and the Sword girl. I mean, he may be where Sword ends, but it would still be such a ballsy maneuver for all of these Marines to gather under someone who was, no offense Drake, fairly low ranking in the grand scheme of things. Fujitora, though, is a much more solid leader and also the owner of a titular sword. It makes perfect sense given his extreme hatred of the world government, and setting up an organization of anti-Cypherpol Marines is very much in character with someone who orchestrated the political decimation of the warlord system. The issue with Fujitora is that Drake was almost certainly a member of Sword before the time skip, as in before Fujitora was drafted into the Marines, because Drake defected pre-time skip to go and infiltrate the Beast Pirates. So instead, we would be looking for a leader with a high enough rank to earn all of the confidences, but also someone with their own powerful agenda. Perhaps some sort of inner burning justice. And with that criteria, Kuzan is the only person I can really see instituting this sort of system, especially when you examine his words to Smoker on Punk Hazard. I never thought the world government was the be-all and end-all. You don't have to be affiliated with the Navy to accomplish things in the world, and there are some things you can only see when you remain independent. Kuzan's epiphany was on Ohara, and so he's had 20 years to ruminate and forge his own individual justice and be on his way. And actually, we might have something of a Denjiro situation happening here, where he was always asleep because Denjiro was also the witching hour boy by night, and so Kuzan might have always been sleepy or lazy on duty because he spent every night pursuing his true burning justice, setting up and operating Sword. And with that in mind, joining the Blackbeard Pirates makes more sense than the successful clothing empire of a talking starfish entrepreneur. Or at the very least, it makes just as much sense as Drake joining Kaido did. Also, to clarify, there are some people out there with the belief that Sword is an organization run by the Marines and is theoretically under the command of Sakazuki, but that is incredibly unlikely, primarily because it's full of all of the people who hate Sakazuki and actively oppose his leadership. In fact, it should probably be said that the vast majority of the Marines in general aren't exactly pleased with the new fleet admiral. In chapter 650, future Hawaiian shirt wearer Jinbei stated that Kuzan had great support within the actual enlisted and officer Marines. However, it was that world government, them their politicians, who strongly pushed for Sakazuki. And I think what I love most in this scenario is that Kizaru was never in contention. Both the world government and the enlisted Marines went, yeah, nah. But I suppose Sword could also be a bit of a Grand Fleet sort of situation, where after their preferred admiral was booted and left with the ability to only wear a single boot because Sakazuki magma'd his leg off, holy crap, Sword formed in protest as a way to actively oppose Sakazuki and the world government. But then again, it all comes back to Drake. There is no reason nor a logistical mechanism of forming an organization led by a man trapped in an isolated country. That groundwork would have needed to be laid well before Drake departed the Marines. And it's here that I would like to come back to Doflamingo because he has a very interesting read on Kuzan. He's no simple wanderer. Only a man who's made up his mind about something can make a face like that. The face like that, by the way, was this one. So that is the face of mind making up. Kuzan has a plan, and Kuzan is doing the plan that he has right now. That's what he's doing. So it looks like burning justice is back on the menu, boys. And that leads us to the question of, actually, where the hell is Kuzan in all of this? When going through chapter 1064, it never even crossed my mind that Kuzan could actually be here right now. And why not? Why couldn't he? Pudding and Van Alga are both here, presumably fresh from Whole Cake Island, and I really don't see the Blackbeard Pirates just deciding to take Pudding on a fun excursion, so it's very possible that Kuzan is with Blackbeard and may even fight against Law. Which, if so, kind of ruins everything for Law. You know, his whole, you silly devil fruit users, I just need to sink your ship and sink your you, and then I am the winner. But it would be very difficult to sink a ship if there was no water. Right now, Kuzan is what makes the Blackbeard Pirates almost overpowered, because they really don't have any weakness with him around. They can eat all of the fruit they want. No one is ever drowning in solid ice. Although actually, according to Pokemon, the weakness for ice is fire, rock, steel, and fighting. And Law, luckily enough, does have one fighting type aboard in his crew, in the form of Combat Bear Beppo. So right now, I'm going to say that Beppo is the only possible hope of Law winning this conflict. So he's definitely not winning, but the potential of Law and Kuzan meeting is quite interesting, because there was an idea popularized by Randy Troy that Law could also be an agent of Sword due to a lot of highly circumstantial events, like his connection to Kobe during the Rocky Port incident, and his connection to Drake, who just decided to free Law from samurai prison for, checks notes, no reason. Even Law was like, Drake, mate, I don't know what you're thinking, but I'll take it. And then of course there's Rocinante, who is a secret marine posing as a filthy pirate, some scum. So it's not the weirdest thing in the world to see a child inheriting the will of his mentor in this series. I mean, I don't want to get too deeply into it, but it's potentially important because in that case we would know why Kuzan showed up on Punk Hazard. Through lore. But this is getting to the point where we're like compounding theories on top of each other and building a Jenga tower a bit too high for my liking. So let's talk about Kobe, a legit sword boy, and one of the things I'm most keen to see is the inevitable discussion between Kobe and Kuzan. Whether Kuzan is a member of Sword or not, I would love to see how this plays out. Because it could either be Kuzan giving Kobe a message, a sort of, look, this is why I've had you captured. Blackbeard, he's planning this, and you need to tell everyone. Or it could just be a confrontation of justice. Kobe wondering why Kuzan has betrayed all of the things it is that he represented. Either way, it would be fantastic. But I'm also interested in the other side of this as well. I'd love to explore what the actual Blackbeard pirates think about having a former admiral join their crew. This may be a bold statement, but I cannot imagine that Blackbeard is stupid enough to think that Kuzan joined the crew because he wants to make him the pirate king, or even that he believes in any of Blackbeard's very chaotic ideals. The only insight we currently have on this is the conversation with Burgess during Dressrosa, where Mr. Wrestler says that he just can't bring himself to trust that they're Aokiji. And I think it is important to highlight the fact that Burgess called him Aokiji instead of Kuzan, because using his marine epithet is a very subtle way of making it clear that Burgess thinks that Kuzan's priority is still with the Marines. But then again, Blackbeard just replies, yeah, you got a good point, Burgess. But at the same time, all of my men are completely untrustworthy bunglenuts. I mean, have you met them? In fact, have you met you? Would you trust you? And I think that's a very fair point. Half of the Blackbeard pirates are ex-prison inmates, one is an ex-prison warden, and one is a horse. So trust has never really been one of Blackbeard's main criteria when hiring all of his employees. But when it comes to Sword, I want your opinion, and I got it, with the majority of the Grand Fleet members believing that Kuzan is indeed the leader. And very interestingly, despite being labeled as the captain of Sword, very few people seem to think that Drake is the ultimate mastermind. Now, to be fair, there are other options like Garp and Sengoku, but I don't know. To me, I just don't see the two retired old men set in their ways really striving to spearhead this sort of initiative. I mean, right now, Garp's biggest worry is more along the lines of his crippling incontinence. Meanwhile, your biggest worry is what to watch next, and it's this, so worry no more, and click it.